The Zephyrian Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as Ambassador Crix, 7, delivered his report. His metallic voice echoed off the crystalline walls, each word sharp and precise like the blade of a ceremonial dagger. The human delegation refuses our terms, Crix, 7 announced, his 4 arms gesturing in traditional patterns of frustration. They claim our mining rights on their moon violate some primitive concept they call sovereignty. Elder Voss Prime leaned forward on his hover platform, his ancient exoskeleton creaking with the movement. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 12 different star systems shifted uncomfortably. The humans had been nothing but trouble since first contact 3 years ago. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Thane, her serpentine form coiling around her speaking pillar, we should consider more direct methods of persuasion. The chamber fell silent. In the 3,000 years since the Galactic Council's formation, such suggestions were rarely spoken aloud. The civilized galaxy had moved beyond crude violence, preferring economic pressure, diplomatic isolation, and technological sanctions to settle disputes. Elder Vosprime's optical sensors dimmed as he considered the proposal. The humans controlled 17 systems now, having spread with alarming speed once they discovered faster-than-light travel. Their space was rich in rare minerals and energy sources the Council desperately needed. You speak of assassination, he said finally. I speak of practical solutions, Thane replied smoothly. Remove their key leaders, and the humans will fracture. They're a young species, barely 500 years into space flight. Without strong leadership, they'll collapse into infighting and accept our terms. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several counselors nodded agreement, while others recoiled in disgust. The Altarians, a peaceful crystalline species, began their harmonic protest songs. The Corvin delegation simply stood and left, their moral code preventing them from even listening to such discussions. The Assassins' Guild still exists, Crix, 7 added quietly. They maintain their ancient contracts and codes. For the right price, they could solve our human problem permanently. Elder Voss Prime was old enough to remember when the Assassins' Guild operated openly, before the Great Peace Accords relegated them to the shadows. They were said to be nearly extinct now, their services rarely needed in the civilized galaxy. But they still honored their ancient oaths, and their reputation remained intact. No target had ever survived once the Guild accepted a contract. The cost would be enormous, Voss Prime mused. The Guild charges premium rates for their services, especially for political targets. The humans' mineral wealth would pay for itself 100 times over, Thane pressed. Consider it an investment in galactic stability. The debate raged for hours. Finally, a vote was called. By the narrowest of margins, the Council approved the motion to contact the Assassins' Guild. The decision was classified at the highest levels, known only to the 12 senior counselors present. 3 days later, in the shadow markets of Nexus Station, Crix, 7 made contact with a figure known only as the Broker. The meeting took place in a maintenance tunnel deep within the station's mechanical sectors, where surveillance was impossible and sound carried poorly. The Broker was a void-born, one of the mysterious species that evolved in the vacuum of space itself. Its form shifted constantly, partially phased between dimensions, making it difficult to focus on directly. We require the services of the Guild, Crix, 7 stated without preamble. The Guild hears all requests, the Broker replied, its voice seeming to come from several directions at once. State your requirements. 5 targets. Human leadership. The species must be discouraged from further expansion. The Broker's form solidified slightly, revealing what might have been surprise. Humans? The bipedal primates from the Sol system? The same. Can it be done? Everything can be done, for the right price. But, first, the Guild requires intelligence on your targets. We do not work blind. Over the following week, the Council compiled extensive dossiers on 5 key human leaders: President Chun of the United Earth Government, Admiral Martinez of the Human Defense Fleet, Director Okafor of the Colonial Development Agency, General Petrov of the Terran Marines, and Dr. Sarah Kim, the Chief Architect of Human FTL Technology. The files were comprehensive, detailing personal habits, security protocols, travel schedules, and psychological profiles. The council spared no expense in their surveillance, confident that the guild would find the information sufficient. The response came sooner than expected. The broker requested another meeting, this time in an even more secure location, an abandoned mining facility in the asteroid belt around Kepler 442. Crix 7 arrived to find the broker already waiting in the facility's old command center. The Voidborn's form seemed more agitated than before, shifting between dimensions with unusual frequency. "We have reviewed your targets." The broker began without ceremony. "The guild must decline this contract." The words hit Crix 7 like a physical blow. In all recorded history, the Assassin's Guild had never refused a legitimate contract. Their reputation was built on absolute reliability. "I don't understand," Crix 7 stammered. "The payment offered exceeds your standard rates by 300%. The targets are well documented. What more do you require?" The broker's form stabilized, and, for the first time, Crix 7 could see something like fear in its alien features. "The guild has protocols," the broker explained slowly. "Before accepting any contract, we conduct preliminary reconnaissance. Standard procedure for evaluating target security and mission feasibility. And our initial scouts never returned." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Guild scouts were among the most skilled operatives in the galaxy, capable of infiltrating any security system, surviving in any environment, and escaping from any trap. Their survival rate on reconnaissance missions was 99.7%. "All of them?" Crix 7 asked weakly. "7 teams. 35 of our finest operatives. They vanished without a trace while conducting basic surveillance on your human targets." Crix 7's exoskeleton began to rattle with involuntary tremors. The implications were staggering. If the guild's elite scouts couldn't even observe humans safely, what did that say about the species they were dealing with? Perhaps they were simply discovered and captured? Crix 7 suggested desperately. The broker's laugh was like the sound of reality tearing. "The guild has protocols for capture as well. Our operatives carry quantum communicators that activate automatically under duress. We received no such signals. Our people simply disappeared. But humans are primitives. Their technology is barely above industrial age standards." "Their technology is not what concerns us," the broker replied ominously. "It's their behavior patterns. Our psychoanalysts have reviewed the human data you provided. The species exhibits characteristics that trigger our deepest warning protocols." "What characteristics?" The broker pulled up a holographic display showing various species profiles. Red warning indicators flashed next to each one. Pattern recognition suggests humans share traits with only 3 other species we've encountered. The harvester plague from the Andromeda Spiral, a hive mind that consumed entire star systems before we contained it. The rage-touched of the void deep. Berserker nomads whose mere presence drove other species to madness. And the architects, who built weapons capable of destroying reality itself before they vanished. Crix 7 studied the display with growing horror. Each of the listed species had been either quarantined or had gone extinct after causing massive galactic upheavals. "But humans seem so reasonable," he protested weakly. "Superficially, yes. They engage in diplomacy, form trade agreements, follow most basic interstellar laws. But our deep psychological analysis reveals disturbing patterns. Humans possess what our experts call adaptive lethality. When threatened, they don't simply fight back. They learn, adapt, and escalate until the threat is completely eliminated." The broker manipulated the display, showing historical data from humanity's pre-spaceflight period. "Study their primitive conflicts. When faced with technological disadvantages, they didn't simply acquire equivalent weapons, they developed superior ones. When confronted with numerical odds, they didn't seek equal numbers, they developed tactics that made numbers irrelevant. When challenged by natural disasters, they didn't simply survive, they transformed entire continents to prevent future occurrences." "That just sounds like normal evolutionary adaptation," Crix 7 said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Normal adaptation seeks equilibrium. Human adaptation seeks dominance. They are not content to merely survive a threat. They must ensure it never threatens them again. This psychology extends to all aspects of their existence. The display shifted to show human expansion patterns since achieving FTL travel. In 3 years, they've colonized 17 systems using technology they developed from first principles. They didn't simply copy existing FTL designs. They created entirely new approaches that our scientists are still trying to understand. Their ships are crude by our standards, but they're improving exponentially. So they're fast learners. That doesn't make them dangerous enough to refuse a contract. The broker's form darkened, becoming more solid and somehow more menacing. Our scouts weren't just watching the targets. They were learning about human society, technology, and military capabilities. Standard intelligence gathering. Yes? And we believe the humans detected our surveillance and responded appropriately from their perspective. They didn't just capture our operatives. Our analysis suggests they dissected them. The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of horror through Crix 7's consciousness. Impossible. Humans are signatories to the Galactic Convention on Prisoner Treatment. They follow rules of war. They follow rules when dealing with recognized enemies in open conflict. But intelligence operatives exist in a gray area. From the human perspective, unknown aliens conducting covert surveillance represent a potential existential threat requiring immediate investigation. The broker brought up several files showing human historical precedents. When their primitive nations faced espionage, they didn't simply expel the spies. They extracted every piece of useful information first. When they encountered unknown diseases, they didn't simply quarantine them. They studied them until they understood exactly how they functioned. When they discovered new scientific principles, they didn't simply observe them. They weaponized them. You're suggesting humans would torture guild operatives for information? Torture is too simple a word. Humans have a documented history of thorough investigation. They would learn everything our operatives knew about guild techniques, technology, and procedures. Then, they would prepare accordingly. The full implications began to sink in. If humans had captured and studied guild operatives, they would now understand exactly how the assassins operated. Any future attempts would face prepared opponents who knew their methods. But surely the guild's reputation for invincibility would give humans pause. The broker's laugh was bitter. You still don't understand. Humans don't respect reputation, they test it. To them, an invincible opponent isn't a deterrent, it's a challenge. They would view defeating the Assassin's Guild as proof of their own superiority. Crix 7 was beginning to understand why the guild had refused the contract. But his political masters wouldn't accept failure easily. What if we increased the payment? Doubled it? Tripled it? No amount of payment is worth the guild's destruction. And that's what this contract would ultimately cause. If we moved against human leadership, they wouldn't simply replace their fallen leaders and move on. They would identify the threat source and eliminate it completely. The guild has hidden for 3,000 years. How could humans possibly find you? The broker gestured to the empty facility around them. This station was built by the Chromac Empire 12,000 years ago. The Chromac were the galaxy's finest engineers, creators of self-repairing infrastructure and quantum-shielded facilities. They considered their technology unbreachable. What happened to them? They're extinct. Wiped out 8,000 years ago by a species they underestimated. A species that also preferred to remain hidden, also considered itself invincible, and also believed that superior technology guaranteed victory. The parallel was obvious and terrifying. Crix 7 found himself gripping the conference table for support. The humans haven't even been in space for 500 years. The species that destroyed the Chromac had been in space for less than 200 when they began their campaign. Age and experience don't guarantee survival. Adaptability does. So the guild will do nothing? The guild will do something unprecedented. We're placing humanity on our forbidden target list. Not just the 5 leaders you requested, but the entire species. Any client requesting action against human targets will be refused, and their identity reported to our security division for investigation. Crix 7 stared at the broker in shock. The forbidden target list contained only 3 entries: the Galactic Council itself, the guild's own members, and the legendary watchers who supposedly monitored universal threats. Adding an entire species was unprecedented. Furthermore, the broker continued, the guild is withdrawing from all operations in human space. Our surviving cells in that region are being extracted immediately. You're afraid of them. Fear is an emotion the guild doesn't experience. We simply recognize an unacceptable risk when we see one. Humans represent what our analysts call an extinction-level threat multiplier. They don't just pose danger to their immediate targets. They pose danger to the concept of covert operations entirely. The broker began to fade, preparing to phase back into the void. Give your masters this advice. Treat humans as equals, not obstacles. The galaxy is large enough for multiple apex species. Those who try to eliminate humanity through force or deception will find themselves facing an enemy that doesn't simply fight back. It evolves beyond the capacity of its opponents to threaten it again. And if the Council refuses this advice? The broker's form was almost completely transparent now, its voice echoing from across dimensional barriers. Then, the Guild recommends preparing for a new galactic order. Because if humanity survives the Council's aggression, they won't simply demand respect. They'll ensure compliance. With those words, the broker vanished completely, leaving Crix, 7 alone in the abandoned facility with a message he dreaded delivering to his superiors. The return journey to Zephyrian space felt endless. Crix, 7 spent the time reviewing everything he knew about humans, searching for some flaw in the broker's analysis. But the more he studied human behavior patterns, the more terrified he became. Every human interaction with other species followed the same pattern: initial cooperation, careful study, rapid advancement, then confident expansion. They didn't simply learn from their experiences, they systematically exceeded them. When humans first encountered Altarian crystal technology, they didn't just copy the designs. Within 6 months, they had developed crystal matrices that could store 10 times more energy than the originals. When they studied Corvin biomechanics, they didn't simply adopt existing techniques. They created hybrid technologies that merged biological and mechanical principles in ways no one had thought possible. The pattern was clear and consistent. Humans didn't adapt to galactic standards, they redefined them. By the time Crix, 7 reached the council chambers, he had made his decision. He would deliver the broker's message exactly as spoken, consequences be damned. If the council chose to ignore the warning, that was their choice. But he would not be responsible for whatever happened next. The emergency session was called for the next day. All 12 senior counselors attended, their expressions ranging from eager anticipation to barely concealed anxiety. Report, Elder Vosprime commanded. Crix, 7 took a deep breath and began. He spoke for 2 hours, detailing every aspect of his conversation with the broker. He explained the Guild's unprecedented refusal, their analysis of human psychology, and their stark warnings about humanity's adaptive capabilities. The chamber erupted in chaos before he finished speaking. Counselor Thane accused him of fabrication, claiming no species could be dangerous enough to frighten the legendary Assassins Guild. Others demanded proof, evidence, or alternative explanations. Only Elder Vosprime remained silent, his ancient optical sensors fixed on some distant point beyond the chamber walls. "You're suggesting," Counselor Marin finally said, her crystalline voice ringing with disbelief, "that a species barely out of its technological infancy has somehow defeated the galaxy's most feared assassins without even knowing they were under attack." "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Crix, 7 replied firmly. "The Guild's analysis indicates humans detected covert surveillance through means we don't understand and responded with methods we can't predict. Their recommendation is absolute avoidance of hostile action." "Preposterous." Thane's serpentine form writhed with agitation. "No single species has that kind of capability. The Guild is being overly cautious. The Guild has operated successfully for 4,000 years, Crix, 7 countered. Their survival depends on accurate threat assessment. If they say humans are too dangerous to target, we should listen." The debate continued for hours, growing more heated with each exchange. Finally, Elder Vosprime raised one ancient hand for silence. "I am old," he said quietly. "Old enough to remember when the Harvester Plague first appeared. Old enough to recall the last confirmed sighting of the Architects. And old enough to recognize patterns that younger beings might miss." The chamber fell silent, waiting for wisdom from their most senior member. "In my experience, when apex predators change their behavior, wise prey pays attention. The Assassin's Guild is an apex predator in the realm of covert operations. If they're altering their fundamental protocols because of humanity, then humanity represents something unprecedented. So what do you suggest? Counselor Marin asked. Elder Vosprim's optical sensors dimmed with deep contemplation. We wait, we watch, and we pray to whatever deities still listen that humanity continues to view us as potential partners rather than obstacles to be overcome. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council's failed attempt to contract the Assassin's Guild, and the galaxy was beginning to feel the tremors of change. News traveled slowly through the vast networks of trade routes and communication relays, but certain types of information spread with remarkable speed. The kind of information that made civilized beings check their security systems twice and reconsider their expansion plans. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the UES Endeavour, watching the construction of humanity's newest deep space station. The facility would serve as a hub for the outer colonies, a testament to human engineering that had already attracted attention from a dozen alien species. Some came as admirers, others as potential trading partners, and a few arrived with purposes that remained carefully hidden. Captain, we're receiving another request for technological exchange, reported Commander James Park, approaching with a data pad that glowed with urgent priority markers. This one's from the hegemony of worlds. Sarah turned from the viewport, her expression shifting from contemplative to professionally alert. The hegemony represented 43 star systems and controlled some of the richest trade routes in the galaxy. Their sudden interest in human technology was flattering, but also deeply suspicious. What do they want this time? Everything, James replied grimly. FTL drive schematics, artificial gravity generators, quantum communication arrays, and something they're calling defensive adaptation protocols. Defensive adaptation protocols. Sarah raised an eyebrow. We don't have anything by that name in our technical databases. No, ma'am. But their request specifically mentions our demonstrated ability to neutralize covert surveillance and eliminate hostile intelligence operatives through unknown means. The words hit Sarah like a cold wave. For the past 6 months, human space had experienced an unusual phenomenon. Unknown vessels had been detected at the edges of their sensor networks, always staying just beyond identification range. These contacts would observe human activities for brief periods before vanishing without explanation. Initially, the human defense fleet had treated these as routine intelligence gathering by curious alien species. First contact protocols were still being developed, and it wasn't unusual for civilizations to spy on each other before formal diplomatic engagement. But then, the pattern changed. The unknown vessels began approaching closer to human installations, conducting what appeared to be detailed surveillance of military facilities, government buildings, and key infrastructure. When human patrol ships moved to intercept, the intruders would disappear completely, often in ways that violated known laws of physics. The breakthrough came when Dr. Elena Vasquez, working at the Lunar Research Station, detected unusual quantum signatures in the areas where mysterious contacts had been reported. Her analysis revealed traces of exotic matter that shouldn't exist according to current human understanding of science. Whatever these things are, she had reported to the Defense Council, they're not using conventional technology. I'm reading quantum phase shifts that suggest partial dimensional displacement. These aren't ships in any sense we understand. The revelation had prompted a complete overhaul of human security protocols. If hostile aliens were using technology that could bypass traditional detection methods, humanity needed new approaches to defend itself. The solution came from an unexpected source, Dr. Michael Rodriguez, a theoretical physicist studying quantum mechanics at the Mars Institute. His work on multidimensional resonance patterns had been purely academic until the intelligence reports crossed his desk. If these things exist partially outside our dimensional space, he explained to a hastily assembled team of scientists and military officials, then we need detection methods that can function across dimensional boundaries. The project that followed was classified at the highest levels of human government. Working with breakthrough speed that astonished even the researchers themselves, the combined team developed a network of quantum resonance detectors capable of identifying dimensional phase shifts across vast distances. The first field test occurred 3 weeks later, when sensors detected another mysterious contact near the Proxima Centauri colony. Instead of sending patrol ships, the humans activated their new detection grid and waited. What they found changed everything. The contact wasn't a ship at all, but a living being existing in a state of partial dimensional displacement. The entity appeared to be conducting detailed biological scans of human colonists, collecting samples of their genetic material through methods that bypassed all known security measures. Worse, the quantum resonance revealed that this wasn't an isolated incident. The detection grid identified 17 similar entities operating throughout human space, all engaged in what could only be described as systematic intelligence gathering on a scale that suggested preparation for something far more sinister than casual observation. The human response was swift and decisive. If unknown aliens were conducting covert operations against human civilians, those operations would be stopped immediately and permanently. Dr. Rodriguez's team had already begun development of what they called dimensional anchor technology, a method of forcing phase-displaced entities back into normal space, where they could be properly identified and questioned. The first prototype was deployed at the Titan Defense Station within 48 hours of the discovery. The results exceeded all expectations and horrified the researchers who witnessed them. When activated, the dimensional anchor didn't simply force the mysterious entity into normal space. It completely disrupted the being's ability to maintain dimensional coherence. The creature, which appeared to be some kind of energy-based life form, suffered what could only be described as catastrophic dimensional collapse. The being didn't die in any conventional sense. Instead, it became trapped between dimensional states, experiencing existence across multiple realities simultaneously. The result was a form of suffering so profound that it defied human comprehension. "My God," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief architect of human FTL technology, as she watched the readings. "We didn't just capture it. We broke its fundamental existence." The trapped entity began broadcasting distress signals across frequencies that human technology couldn't detect directly, but could measure through their quantum resonance equipment. The signals weren't just calls for help. They were warnings, transmitted in what appeared to be a complex multidimensional language. Dr. Rodriguez worked feverishly to decode the transmissions, driven by a growing sense of horror at what they had accidentally done. When he finally cracked the basic structure of the alien communication, the translated message sent chills through everyone who read it. "Hunters of the void paths, flee this space. The solid realm dwellers have learned to bind shadow forms to flesh reality. Escape while escape is possible. The death that does not end awaits those who linger." The implications were staggering. Humanity had unknowingly developed a weapon capable of inflicting fates worse than death on beings that existed partially outside normal spacetime. And every intelligence operative in human space had just received a message that the humans were now capable of detecting and neutralizing covert surveillance. "We need to contact these things immediately," Sarah had insisted during the emergency briefing. "Explain that we didn't mean to cause such harm. Offer medical assistance if possible." How do you provide medical care to a being that exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously? Dr. Kim asked quietly. "We don't even understand what we did to it, let alone how to undo it." The situation became more complex when long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving rapidly away from human space. Whatever species had been conducting surveillance, they were withdrawing en masse, abandoning operations that must have taken considerable time and resources to establish. But the withdrawals weren't orderly retreats. They were panicked flights, conducted with such haste that several of the departing entities left behind quantum signatures indicating severe dimensional stress. The aliens were literally tearing holes in space-time in their desperation to escape human detection. Admiral Martinez had summed up the situation with characteristic bluntness. "We accidentally created a weapon that can torture interdimensional beings, and now everyone who was spying on us thinks we did it on purpose. The entire galaxy probably believes we can detect and neutralize any form of covert operation." The assessment proved prophetic. Within weeks, human space experienced a phenomenon that military analysts termed diplomatic precipitation. The sudden appearance of formal ambassadors from species that had never before acknowledged human existence. The first to arrive was a delegation from the Voidborn Collective, the same species that served as brokers for the Assassin's Guild. Their representative, identified as Speaker for the Deep, requested immediate emergency consultation with human leadership. The meeting took place aboard the Endeavor, with Sarah serving as primary contact due to her experience with first contact protocols. The Voidborn delegate appeared as a constantly shifting form that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously, though it remained carefully anchored in normal space-time. "We come to establish formal understanding," Speaker for the Deep announced without preamble. "Recent events have created complications for those who work in shadow." "Recent events?" Sarah asked carefully. "We're not aware of any specific incidents that might affect interdimensional operations." The Voidborn's form solidified slightly, revealing what might have been surprise. "You claim ignorance of the binding? The punishment of the Shadow Walker in your Titan space." Sarah felt a chill of recognition. "You're talking about the dimensional anchor incident." "We are speaking of torture technology that makes death a mercy," Speaker for the Deep replied, its voice carrying harmonics of genuine fear. "Your species has developed capabilities that violate the fundamental nature of existence itself." "That was an accident," Sarah insisted. "We were trying to identify unknown contacts in our space for peaceful communication. We had no idea the technology would cause harm. Accident or intention matters little to those who experience the binding. What matters is capability demonstrated and reputation established." Speaker for the Deep manipulated the air with gestures that seemed to pull images from somewhere else, displaying holographic representations of various alien species. Word spreads through shadow networks faster than light travels through void. 17 intelligence organizations have withdrawn from human space. 43 covert operation cells have been abandoned. The Guild of Silent Knives has declared humanity untouchable. All because your species accidentally created a weapon against shadow workers. "We don't want to be untouchable," Sarah protested. "We want peaceful relations with all sentient species. If we can help the being we accidentally harmed, we're willing to try." The Voidborn's laugh sounded like reality breaking. "Help? The Shadow Walker exists now in state of permanent becoming unbecoming. It experiences every possible version of its own destruction across infinite dimensions simultaneously. Your technology didn't kill it. It made death impossible while ensuring eternal suffering." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. The idea that human technology had accidentally created such a horrific fate for an innocent being was almost unbearable. Can it be reversed? Unknown. The effect is unprecedented in recorded history. Perhaps with centuries of study, methods might be developed. Perhaps not. The Shadow Walker may endure its condition until the heat death of the universe. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process the magnitude of what humanity had accidentally done. When she opened them again, her expression was one of grim determination. "Then, we'll spend whatever time and resources necessary to find a cure. And we'll share any breakthroughs freely with your people and anyone else who can help." Speaker for the Deep's form flickered with what might have been surprise. "You would dedicate significant effort to healing one being from unknown species." "We would dedicate our entire civilization to it if necessary," Sarah replied firmly. "Causing unintended suffering is bad enough. Ignoring it would be unforgivable." For long moments, the Voidborn remained silent, its form cycling through patterns that suggested intense thought or communication with distant entities. This response was not anticipated. It finally said, "Most species would consider the Shadow Walker's fate an acceptable cost for acquiring effective deterrent technology. We're not most species. No, you are something else entirely. This creates new complications for shadow workers." "What do you mean?" Speaker for the Deep gestured again, pulling new images from across dimensions. These showed various species engaged in what appeared to be frantic technological development. "Your accidental achievement has triggered panic among those who depend on stealth and concealment. Governments that rely on covert intelligence gathering, criminal organizations that operate in shadows, even peaceful species that prefer to remain hidden, all now fear that humanity possesses technology that makes concealment impossible." "But we don't," Sarah protested. Our dimensional anchors were specifically designed to detect the quantum signatures we found in our space. They're not some universal stealth detection system. Truth matters less than perception. The galaxy believes humanity can detect and neutralize any form of concealment. This belief is reshaping interstellar politics at fundamental levels. Sarah stared at the holographic displays, trying to comprehend the implications. Reshaping how? Species that once operated through hidden influence are being forced into open diplomacy. Criminal networks are abandoning territories they cannot adequately scout. Intelligence agencies are restructuring their entire operational doctrines. The very concept of covert operations is becoming obsolete in any space where humans might have interests. The revelation was staggering. Humanity had accidentally altered the balance of galactic civilization simply by trying to identify unknown contacts in their own space. And the Assassin's Guild? Speaker for the Deep's form darkened ominously. The Guild faces existential crisis. Their reputation was built on inability to be detected or stopped. If humanity possesses technology that can expose and capture shadow workers, then Guild operations become impossible. We have no intention of interfering with legitimate Guild activities. Intention again matters little. Capability is what creates fear. The Guild now faces choice. Adapt to new reality where covert operations may be impossible, or eliminate the source of that new reality. The threat was clear and terrifying. Sarah found herself face to face with the possibility that humanity's accidental technological breakthrough had made them mortal enemies of the galaxy's most effective killers. What would it take to convince the Guild we're not a threat to their operations? Demonstration of limitation. Proof that human detection technology cannot identify Guild operatives. Or removal of technology entirely. We can't remove defensive systems that protect our citizens. But we might be able to demonstrate limitations if Guild representatives are willing to work with us on controlled testing. The Voidborn's form flickered with rapid pattern shifts that suggested communication with distant entities. After several minutes, it solidified again. Proposal has been transmitted. Guild response will determine whether negotiation remains possible or whether alternative solutions become necessary. Sarah felt a chill at the implications. Alternative solutions? The Guild considers humanity an existential threat to their survival. Such threats are traditionally eliminated through methods the Guild has perfected over millennia. But recent intelligence suggests such methods may no longer be effective against human targets. Because of our dimensional detection technology? Because of patterns observed in human responses to covert threats. Guild analysts have concluded that attacking humanity would trigger adaptive responses that would ultimately prove more dangerous than current situation. The conversation was taking on surreal qualities. Sarah was learning that humanity was feared not just for what they had done, but for what they might do if provoked. So the Guild is afraid to attack us because they think we might develop even worse defensive technologies in response. Guild analysis suggests humans respond to threats through escalation rather than accommodation. Each attack would prompt development of superior defenses. Each defense would require more sophisticated attacks. Each escalation would expand human capabilities until Guild effectiveness became permanently compromised. Sarah realized she was looking at a perfect example of humanity's reputation for adaptive lethality that the Guild apparently found so intimidating. We don't want conflict with the Guild or anyone else. We just want to protect our people and pursue peaceful development. Guild understands this. Guild also understands that human concepts of peaceful development include technological advancement that threatens established balance of galactic power. From Guild perspective, allowing humanity to continue current trajectory eventually leads to extinction of all covert operations across known space. The meeting continued for hours, with Speaker for the Deep explaining the complex web of fears and calculations that now surrounded humanity's place in galactic civilization. By the time the session ended, Sarah understood that her species had inadvertently positioned itself as a potential threat to the very foundations of how the galaxy conducted its hidden business. As the Voidborn delegate prepared to depart, it offered one final observation that would haunt Sarah for years to come. Human species demonstrates pattern unprecedented in galactic history. Most civilizations achieve power through conquest, fear, or accumulated resources. Humanity appears to achieve power through accident and misunderstanding. This makes human civilization impossible to predict or counter using traditional methods. Is that why everyone's afraid of us? Fear is an inadequate word. Galaxy experiences emotion closer to cosmic vertigo. Humanity represents variable that cannot be calculated or controlled. From perspective of those who depend on predictable patterns, your species represents approaching end of universe they understand. After Speaker for the Deep vanished back into dimensional space, Sarah stood alone on the observation deck, staring out at the construction crews still working on the space station. The workers moved with casual efficiency, unaware that their civilization had accidentally triggered a crisis that was reshaping the fundamental nature of galactic politics. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had achieved something that the greatest military powers and most sophisticated civilizations had never managed. They had made the entire galaxy afraid of what they might do next, all by trying to figure out who was watching them and why. The real question now was whether humanity could learn to navigate this new reality before their accidental reputation for dangerous unpredictability triggered conflicts they were nowhere near prepared to handle. As if summoned by her thoughts, Commander Park appeared beside her with another data pad full of urgent communications. "Captain, we're receiving formal diplomatic overtures from 16 different species, all requesting immediate establishment of non-aggression pacts and technological exchange agreements." Sarah sighed, taking the pad and scanning the list of civilizations that had suddenly decided humanity needed to be their friend rather than their problem. "I suppose being accidentally terrifying has its advantages." "Yes, ma'am. Though intelligence suggests we should be prepared for species that might decide eliminating the perceived threat is easier than negotiating with it." Sarah nodded grimly. Humanity's accidental achievement had bought them respect and fear in equal measure. Whether that combination would lead to peace or war remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never view humanity as just another emerging species again. For better or worse, they had earned a reputation that would shape interstellar relations for generations to come. The only question was whether they could live up to that reputation without destroying themselves in the process. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in unprecedented secrecy, held not in the grand chambers of Nexus Station, but in a heavily shielded facility deep within the core worlds. Representatives arrived through circuitous routes, their identities hidden behind quantum scramblers and dimensional cloaks. The topic of discussion was too sensitive for normal diplomatic channels. Elder Voss Prime materialized at the head of the circular table, his ancient exoskeleton showing signs of stress fractures that hadn't been there 6 months ago. Around him, the surviving members of the senior council took their positions with visible reluctance. 3 seats remained empty. Their occupants had withdrawn from galactic politics entirely after receiving intelligence reports about humanity's latest defensive innovations. "The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections," Voss Prime began without ceremony. "Human technological development continues to accelerate, and their reputation for unpredictable capabilities has reached critical mass." Counselor Thane, her serpentine form coiled tightly around her speaking pillar, radiated barely controlled fear. "The hegemony of worlds has formally requested membership in something they're calling a Human Protection Alliance. 43 star systems are willing to subordinate their sovereignty to a species that's been in space for 500 years. The Corvin Collective has gone further," added Counselor Marin, her crystalline structure flickering with agitated energy patterns. "They've offered to share their biomechanical integration technology in exchange for human dimensional security guarantees. They're literally giving away their most closely guarded secrets for protection against threats that may not even exist." Voss Prime's optical sensors dimmed with what might have been despair. The galactic order that had maintained peace for 3 millennia was crumbling, not because of war or conquest, but because one species had accidentally developed a reputation for capabilities so frightening that established powers were reshaping themselves around avoiding human displeasure. "The Assassin's Guild has submitted their final report," he announced, activating a holographic display that filled the chamber with ominous red warnings. Their analysis confirms our worst fears about human adaptive capabilities. The Guild's assessment was comprehensive and terrifying. Over the past 6 months, they had conducted the most thorough intelligence operation in their history, deploying resources normally reserved for galactic-level threats to study humanity from every conceivable angle. Their findings painted a picture of a species unlike anything the galaxy had encountered before. Humans didn't simply respond to challenges. They anticipated them, prepared for them, and developed countermeasures that went far beyond what was necessary to address immediate threats. The Guild attempted to test human defensive capabilities through controlled exposure. Voss Prime continued, reading from the classified report. They deployed their most advanced reconnaissance technology, designed to be completely undetectable by any known sensor system. And? Thane asked, though her posture suggested she already dreaded the answer. Human detection grids identified and tracked Guild operatives with perfect accuracy. When questioned about this achievement, human scientists claimed they had simply upgraded their dimensional resonance arrays based on data from previous encounters. The words fell into silence like stones into deep water. The Guild's reconnaissance technology had been developed over centuries, incorporating the most sophisticated stealth principles known to galactic science. For humans to defeat it through casual upgrades suggested capabilities that defied rational assessment. The implications are clear, Voss Prime continued grimly. Humanity doesn't just develop defensive technologies. They create defensive technologies that exceed the offensive capabilities of attackers they haven't even encountered yet. Counselor Marin's crystalline form resonated with harmonic frequencies of distress. How is that possible? They can't defend against threats they don't know exist. The Guild's analysis suggests humans operate under the assumption that any threat they can detect represents the minimum capability of potential enemies. They design their defenses to counter theoretical maximum threats rather than observed capabilities. The concept was both impressive and terrifying. Most species develop defensive measures tailored to specific known threats. Humans apparently developed defenses designed to stop anything that might possibly threaten them, whether they had encountered such threats or not. The Guild tested this hypothesis, Voss Prime continued, by exposing human researchers to carefully controlled intelligence about Void Walker phase-shifting technology. Within 3 weeks, human scientists had developed countermeasures that would be effective against phase-shift capabilities far exceeding anything the Guild actually possesses. They're preparing for threats that don't exist? Thane asked in amazement. They're preparing for threats that don't exist yet. The Guild's assessment suggests that human defensive development is operating on the assumption that current galactic technology represents primitive baseline capabilities. They appear to be designing defenses against theoretical advanced versions of every technology they encounter. The implications staggered the assembled counselors. If humans were developing defenses against threats that exceeded current galactic capabilities, they were essentially future-proofing their security against technological developments that hadn't happened yet. But surely there are limits to this approach? Marin protested. They can't anticipate every possible form of attack. Voss Prime activated another section of the Guild report, revealing analysis that chilled even the ancient counselor's circuits. The Guild attempted to identify theoretical attack vectors that human defenses couldn't address. They found none. None. Human dimensional anchor technology can detect and neutralize phase-shifted entities. Their quantum resonance grids can track cloaked vessels using technology beyond current galactic standards. Their adaptive AI systems can identify and counter attack patterns that haven't been invented yet. According to Guild analysis, humans have accidentally created a defensive infrastructure that could withstand assault from civilizations far more advanced than any currently known. The chamber fell silent as the counselors absorbed this information. They were facing the possibility that humanity had unknowingly developed the galaxy's most sophisticated defensive capabilities while trying to figure out who was spying on them. The Guild's recommendation? Thane asked weakly. Complete non-interference. Any hostile action against humanity would trigger defensive adaptations that would ultimately make the human sphere completely impregnable to any form of covert or military action. The report included theoretical projections that painted an even more alarming picture. If humanity continued their current trajectory of defensive development, they would achieve technological superiority over the rest of the galaxy within 50 years, not through aggressive expansion, but through purely defensive innovations that exceeded offensive capabilities by orders of magnitude. There's more, Voss Prime announced heavily. The Guild has intercepted communications suggesting that other major powers are beginning to view humanity as an existential threat requiring preemptive action. A new holographic display showed intelligence intercepts from various galactic powers. The messages were fragmentary, but their implications were clear. Several major civilizations were beginning to consider whether humanity needed to be eliminated before their defensive capabilities became truly unstoppable. The Krillian Empire has begun mobilizing their deep strike fleets, Voss Prime reported. The Sigma Collective is researching biological weapons designed to circumvent human technological defenses. The hegemony's public support for humanity appears to be cover for intelligence operations designed to identify exploitable weaknesses. They're planning to attack. Marin asked in horror. Multiple civilizations are independently reaching the conclusion that humanity represents an unacceptable long-term threat. Each believes they must act before humans achieve total defensive dominance. Fane's serpentine form writhed with agitation. This is madness. Attacking humanity would prove their defensive capabilities are necessary. It would justify every paranoid preparation they've made. Worse, Voss Prime replied. It would trigger the exact adaptive responses the Guild warned about. Human defensive development has been relatively passive so far, focused on protection rather than retaliation. Military pressure would likely shift that focus toward offensive capabilities. The prospect was horrifying. If humanity applied their talent for exceeding theoretical requirements to offensive rather than defensive technology, they could develop weapons that surpassed anything the galaxy possessed. We need to prevent these attacks, Marin declared. Warn humanity, expose the conspiracies, do whatever is necessary to avoid triggering human military development. I agree, Voss Prime said, but our options are limited. We can't reveal Council intelligence sources without compromising our own security, and direct warnings might seem like attempts at manipulation. The discussion continued for hours, exploring various approaches to the crisis. Finally, a consensus emerged around an approach that none of them particularly liked, but all agreed was necessary. We'll establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity, Voss Prime announced. Full alliance terms, technology sharing agreements, mutual defense pacts. If other powers see that humanity has council backing, they might reconsider aggressive action. And if they don't reconsider? Thane asked. Then, we'll have to hope human defensive capabilities are as impressive as the Guild believes. Because if humanity survives coordinated attack from multiple galactic powers, the political landscape that emerges will be entirely different from anything we've known. 3 days later, the U.S. Endeavor received an unprecedented communication. The Galactic Council was requesting immediate diplomatic contact to discuss matters of mutual galactic security. The message carried authentication codes that identified it as coming from the highest levels of galactic government. Captain Sarah Chun found herself once again thrust into first contact protocols, this time with beings who supposedly governed half the known galaxy. The meeting was scheduled for Neutral Station Alpha, a facility maintained by the Council specifically for sensitive diplomatic negotiations. Sarah arrived with a small delegation including Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose expertise in dimensional technology had become crucial to human security, and Admiral Martinez, whose strategic experience might be needed if the discussions took an unexpected turn. The Council representatives were impressive in their dignity and obvious age. Elder Voss Prime appeared to be ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species, while the other counselors radiated the kind of authority that came from governing civilizations older than human recorded history. Captain Chun, Voss Prime began formally. The Council appreciates humanity's willingness to engage in these discussions. The matters we must address are of critical importance to galactic stability. We're honored by the Council's attention, Sarah replied diplomatically. How can humanity be of assistance? What followed was the most extraordinary briefing Sarah had ever received. The Council laid out the full scope of galactic politics, the hidden networks of power and influence, the delicate balances that maintain peace between hundreds of civilizations. They explain the role of covert intelligence, the function of organizations like the Assassin's Guild, and the complex systems that prevented conflicts between species with vastly different capabilities. Then, they explained how humanity's accidental technological breakthroughs had disrupted all of it. Your species has unknowingly altered fundamental assumptions about security and concealment, Voss Prime explained. Technologies that were considered impregnable are now seen as vulnerable. Organizations that operated in shadows for millennia are being forced into daylight. The very concept of covert operations is becoming obsolete. Sarah listened with growing amazement as the Council described a galaxy-wide transformation triggered entirely by human attempts to identify mysterious contacts in their own space. "We didn't intend any of this," she protested. "We were just trying to protect our colonists from unknown surveillance." "Intent matters less than result," Counselor Thane replied. "Your defensive innovations have convinced much of the galaxy that humanity possesses capabilities that threaten established power structures." "What capabilities?" Dr. Vasquez interjected. "We've only developed systems to detect dimensional phase shifting and quantum displacement. They're purely defensive technologies." The Council members exchanged glances that suggested they knew something the humans didn't. Dr. Vasquez, Elder Voss Prime, said carefully, "Are you familiar with the theoretical maximum capabilities of your dimensional anchor technology?" "Well, yes. In theory, the quantum resonance fields could be modified to affect a much wider range of dimensional phenomena. We could potentially disrupt faster-than-light travel, interfere with quantum communication, or even destabilize exotic matter containment systems. But we haven't developed any of those applications." "Haven't developed them yet," Voss Prime corrected gently. "But the underlying technology makes such developments inevitable if humanity continues its current research trajectory." Sarah felt a chill of recognition. "You're saying our defensive technology could accidentally become weapons that affect fundamental aspects of galactic civilization?" "We're saying they already have," Counselor Marin replied. "The mere knowledge that such capabilities are possible has triggered preemptive responses from powers who depend on technologies you could theoretically disrupt." Admiral Martinez leaned forward, his expression grim. "Preemptive responses like what?" The Council's answer changed everything. Over the next hour, they revealed the scope of anti-human sentiment building throughout galactic civilization. Multiple major powers were preparing coordinated strikes designed to eliminate humanity before their technological capabilities could develop further. "The Krillian Empire has assembled a fleet capable of sterilizing entire star systems," Voss Prime reported. "The Sigma Collective is developing bioweapons designed to circumvent your technological defenses. The hegemony's diplomatic overtures are cover for intelligence operations mapping your defensive capabilities." "How long do we have?" Sarah asked, her mind already racing through defensive preparations. "Weeks, possibly days. The various conspiracies are aware of each other now, and they're accelerating their timelines to avoid being preempted by rivals." The briefing continued, revealing layer after layer of threat that humanity had never suspected. By the time it ended, Sarah understood that her species was about to face coordinated attack from enemies they didn't know existed for reasons they barely understood. "What does the Council recommend?" she asked finally. Voss Prime's answer was not what she expected. "We recommend that humanity prepare for war. Not because war is inevitable, but because your preparations for it may be the only thing that prevents it." "I don't understand." "The galaxy fears human technological capabilities. Those fears have created a situation where multiple powers believe they must attack before humanity becomes too strong to defeat. But if humanity demonstrates that they are already too strong to defeat, those same powers may reconsider their aggressive intentions." Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. "You're suggesting we develop the very capabilities that everyone's afraid of as a deterrent to prevent attacks motivated by fear of those capabilities." "Exactly. Paradoxical as it seems, the best way to avoid triggering human military development may be to convince potential attackers that such development has already progressed beyond their ability to counter." Admiral Martinez was already considering tactical implications. "We need to demonstrate capabilities without actually using them aggressively." show enough strength to deter attack while avoiding actions that would justify preemptive strikes. A delicate balance, Voss Prime agreed. But perhaps the only path that avoids galactic war. The meeting concluded with agreements that would have been unimaginable weeks earlier. The Galactic Council would provide humanity with intelligence about pending threats, technological data about potential attackers, and diplomatic support for human defensive preparations. In return, humanity would limit their technological development to purely defensive applications and work with the Council to maintain galactic stability. As Sarah and her delegation prepared to return to human space, Voss Prime offered one final observation that would shape humanity's approach to the crisis. Captain Chun, your species has achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. You have become feared without conquest, respected without aggression, and influential without expansion. Whether this achievement leads to peace or war depends on how wisely you wield the power you never sought. The journey back to the Endeavor was silent, each member of the delegation lost in contemplation of the massive challenges facing their species. They had learned that humanity was respected, feared, and targeted throughout the galaxy, all because of accidental technological breakthroughs that had been intended purely for defensive purposes. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Humanity's desire to protect themselves had inadvertently made them the greatest perceived threat in galactic civilization. Now they would have to become the very thing everyone feared in order to prevent the wars that fear threatened to create. As the Endeavor approached human space, Sarah began composing the most important message in human history, a warning to her species that they were about to face their greatest test, not as conquerors or explorers, but as accidental disruptors of a galactic order they had never known existed. The age of human innocence in the galaxy was ending. What would replace it remained to be seen.